butterfly effect. Butterfly effect. Any brave soul want to say what it is? Mike Windsor.
Basically, the flapping of the wings of a butterfly can domino effect and change the course of all of history.
That I couldn't have really said it either. So our resident trivia expert is right there. His name is Mike Windsor. If you need a trivia partner for like any event you're doing in any part of Indianapolis, give him a call. He'll help you win. Butterfly effect came from a guy by the name of Lorenz. I read an article from the American Scientist, AmericanScientist.org on the butterfly effect. And he challenged, especially in the field of meteorology, stay with me if you're like, Ross, what in the world does this have to do with anything? Trust me, I think it will. He challenged these laws which reached all the way back to Sir Isaac Newton that said that the world, our universe, is like a machine. So you can predict with a high amount of probability like what will happen. This guy, I believe from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, yep, professor there. Matt, say that 10 times. Woo, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He challenged this idea, and in fact proved it, that if a butterfly flaps its wings in one part of the world, because of the cause and effect nature of our world, it can result in a seismic event miles and miles away. If you're like, there's no way, go read about it. It's really fascinating. Now, some people made the butterfly effect what it's not because they said if a butterfly flaps its wings in America, it will cause a hurricane in like Japan. That's not what it says. It says that it can have some seismic effect somewhere else. Did I get this right, Mikey? Do you have anything to correct? Okay, Mikey believes so. If he said it's true, then it must be. Why am I saying this? I think when it comes to faithfulness, having faith, we think more like the Newton version of things. Like, here's what I mean. We just need to understand, faith is understanding these big things of God. You need to understand these big things, and your life needs to kind of amount to this big thing that's already planned for you. Are you with me? We think that your life is like mapped out. There's this big thing already mapped out for you. It's all predicted. It's all, and faithfulness is just living out that big thing that's already planned. You got to understand everything about it. It's certainty. Faith is certainty, by the way. Did you know? You have to be certain about everything, know everything to a science, and you have to just jump into this thing that's already planned for you. I don't think that's true. And I think Scripture shows that it is not. I think faith, one, is a trust. It's following God with just the next step, which may end up in a bunch of different results that will end up being rather big, like big effect somewhere down the line. Like one small step for man, no, that's not where I'm going with it. One small step taken in faith today leads to another small step tomorrow, which may lead you into some event that you didn't mean to be a part of. And then you take your next small step of faith there, and then another one there, and that leads you to yet another event that you didn't plan to be a part of. And it leads to this like bounty of fruit. Like all kinds of crazy, amazing good things, which is much better than, say, Ross, I have this idea of God's plan of like where I need to go in my life, and I say, no, I'm not paying attention to anything else but that big plan, and I'm just going to be faithful and go to that. No. Faithfulness is following Jesus with just the next step. And letting the results be what they may be, which in the end will probably maybe amount to something rather big. Life-changing. But it won't be what you dreamed of. We're going to get to that. We're going to finish here. Today, you'll know that you're bearing the fruit of faithfulness. We're in this series, Inspired, what happens when we live by the Spirit. You'll know you're bearing the fruit of faithfulness if you find yourself in the midst of something and you say, man, I never saw my life getting to this point. And it's really good. And fruitful for you, helpful for people around you, and revealing the kingdom of heaven here and now. You'll know you're bearing the fruit of faithfulness. If you're in the midst of something, you're like, man, I never saw my life getting to this point. And it's fruitful for you, fruitful for your neighbors, and good for the kingdom of heaven. Hello, that's me. Today marks 3 years ago on July 18th was my first day in this community. 3 years ago today, I drove here and had breakfast at Flapjacks and just started meeting people. I did not set out 15 years ago saying, I'm going to plant a church. One step led to another, and then to another, and then to another, to another, which led me here with all of you awesome people. And together, we're trying to do that with each other, one step in front of the other. Right? I don't know where it's going to go. I have no idea where HeavenEarth Church is going to go. And I'm cool with that right now. Give me 5 minutes or 30 seconds. The opposite of faith is not doubt, it's resistance. We're going to talk more about that. Jesus says the Holy Spirit is like the wind. You hear the sound of it, but you don't know where it's come from or where it's going. Faith is not doubt, it's resistance. Faith is saying, God, I'm cool to let your wind blow in and through my life and take it wherever it will. And the results are what they are. The opposite of faith is saying, I feel this nudge from God, but I have this other dream. And it's what my life is going to be about. God, can you negotiate? I'll do a little bit of, I'll let your wind kind of come like a little breeze. I'll catch a little bit of it, and I'll also do my dream. You can let the Spirit of God blow through your life, in and through your life, while you are in a lot of doubt. If you want proof, go study the disciples. They doubted greatly every single step of the way, and yet the Spirit was still blowing in and through their lives. And they ended up being witnesses, and they learned that discipline of bearing the fruit of faithfulness and saying, I don't know what I'm going to be up to today, except for one thing. I will set my sails to catch the wind of the Spirit. And I will let it take me wherever it may take me. Faithfulness is not certainty. It's not knowing all the doctrines, understanding every part of God's mystery. It's putting one foot in front of the other, behind Jesus, and letting it take you wherever it will. I want to show you how Jesus did that. We think that Jesus is the person in whom we have faith. Are you with me? He is. But he's also the person who teaches us how to be faithful. Go back to Hebrews. We fix our eyes on Jesus, faith's pioneer. Jesus is like the dude who carves out a path that wasn't there yet. And he says, hey, come on, Steve. I want to show you how to do this. Come on, Shane. I want to show you how to do this. Pioneer, perfecter. And what you're going to see is that Jesus' faithfulness, he took one step, just like us, in front of the other, and it ended in a really big event where he confronted evil at high noon. The peak of Jesus' crucifixion moment was at noon. His faithfulness, one foot in front of the other, led him from Galilee to the neighborhoods outside of Galilee as a poor carpenter, all the way to Jerusalem, where he stared evil and injustice in the face and got it put on a cross, and he rose from the dead, and boom! Butterfly wings flapping in one part ends up in a seismic salvation event in another part. We're going to get to that, talk more about that in the end. But I wanted to ask you, what does your resistance look like? If the opposite of faith is not doubt, but resistance, what's your resistance look like? What are the ways that you resist the movement of God in your life? Uncertainty is your resistance. Why is that resistance, Christy? Why do you experience that as resistance?
Because you're just not sure of the end results, the leap or the move that you feel being called to do, that you question it and talk yourself out of it, or you know what I mean, like whatever.
I do know what you mean. Yeah. You feel like you got to know the results before you take a step. And so you don't take the step. Resistance. Ooh, I'm all in on that one. What's your resistance look like?
Maybe timing / patience.
Timing/patience. Say more.
If I follow and do and embrace, well then things need to happen right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We're back to results in a way. Remember the fruit that when we took a poll in the room of what people struggle with the most, patience won by a landslide? It's a results thing. Hey, this isn't happening in my timing. All right, I'm going to take this into my own hands because I can bring about a result pretty quickly. What's your resistance look like?
For me, I think maybe being afraid to talk about it publicly, like my love of Jesus to people who strictly oppose Jesus in front of me, or letting them speak their truth, but being afraid to speak my own.
So for Joanna, her resistance looks like a fear of talking about Jesus like publicly, especially with people who are resistant to it. Caleb, sorry, I'm going to share a story that I think is very helpful. So if you're mad at me, you can tell me later, okay? Caleb shared an experience where he was very faithful and stopped to, remember this story, you know about Caleb? He stopped to help somebody out. And he shared this experience of like witnessing. And he kind of threw it back in your face. Is that right, Caleb? A little bit. And Caleb and I unearthed together that he was faithful in one step, but in the next, trying to read somebody else's script to this person, rather than sharing his story. We all do that, right? You know? That too is resistance. What? Oh, I want to create a result. So I'm going to share somebody else's story, which I've heard produces a result. Rather than saying, I'm going to share my story, and that it's going to land however it lands. I can't help but tell my story, because it's my salvation story. Sorry, Caleb, but really good illustration. If you're upset, come talk to me later.
He does this thing when he cares about the most.
You're next. What's your resistance look like? Anything online, maybe? Come on, online folks. What's your resistance look like? Laziness. Lack of being intentional. Yeah. Which I might argue that when we're lacking intentionality, it might be that we're not doing it because it's not going to yield some immediate result. Oftentimes when you do a spiritual practice, there's not like a bounty of fruit on the tree. Like if you sit in the morning and read, like if you're like studying, okay, I'm going to study the Bible and I'm going to read Leviticus, you're not going to get immediate fruit out of that. Leviticus is hard, right? We have a speed of life comment from online. So your resistance looks like, instead of letting the wind of the Holy Spirit blow in and through your life, you're instead guided by the pace of the world, by the way of the world, by the achievements of the world, rather than saying, God, I want to go by your pace. I want to go your way. I want to follow you just the next step. Procrastinating. Again, that's a lack of intentionality. I just want to show you really quick how, what resistance looked like in Jesus' time. I would argue we do this too. So these are people, again, I told you, Jesus' faithfulness. I have thought forever that Jesus had, it all scripted out. Okay, age 30. Retire as a carpenter. Finish training as Messiah. Start ministry around the Sea of Galilee and recruit fishermen. Go to villages surrounding there. Heal, blah, blah, blah. Year 3, go to Jerusalem. Confront religious elites, injustice, evil, the sin of the world. Get killed for it. 3 days after 3 years, be risen. Good, I'm ready. Let's go. I don't think that's what it looked like. I started to consider that we say this doctrine. Remember I said you don't have to be certain of all the doctrines. One of the ancient doctrines of Christianity is that Jesus is fully God and fully human. Everybody got that? Good. Pretty tough. The guy who came up with that doctrine said it's a mystery. You're sure it sure is. And Jesus' humanness, you can tell when he prays, when he talks, he has an idea, a vision of where things are heading, but he doesn't have the exact plan. And he's doing just like you and I got to do. Wake up, next day, take the next step. So I think he could have got to Jerusalem in year 3 and said, I think I'm going to go back home now. You ever thought of that? He's praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. If you think that doubt is the opposite of faith, then Jesus was doing the opposite of faith in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's doubting, he's having doubts, painful doubts, praying to God in the Garden of Gethsemane before he's arrested, saying, God, if it's possible, take this cup from me. Basically saying, I don't want to keep going. I would rather not go where I think this is heading. Do you see that? He doesn't know. He's not exactly sure. But he's starting to get an idea of what it's going to mean to suffer to redeem humankind. He has a moment of doubt. Big doubt. And then he says this thing, and then he comes right back around to, but not my will, but yours be done. Next step. I'll go. Your doubt is not the problem. Your resistance is. You can take a step forward while you doubt. You can. And Jesus does. So instead of going home, he discerns it's time. It's time to confront evil at high noon. It's time to lay it out bare in the open, to show people what the evil of humankind has done to the world, what the injustice of humans has done to the world, what the sin of humans has done for generations, such that a man that is so good, so just, perfectly righteous in God's sight gets innocently murdered on a tree. He puts that stuff out in the open. One step after another leads to that big event where he shows us once and for all, evil and justice sin have no hold over you. He's risen to show he's victorious over those things. They're all conquered. There's nothing that stands between you but love now, between you and God. Nothing. As the John Mark Millen song says, there's nothing that stands between us and God but love now. Faithfulness is taking the next step. But man, we resist. Look at this resistance. Chapter 19. In John, then Pilate had Jesus taken and whipped. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head and dressed him in a purple robe. Over and over they went up to him and said, "Greetings, King of the Jews!" And they slapped him in the face. Pilate came out of the palace again and said to the Jewish leaders, "Look, I'm bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no grounds for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here's the man!" When the chief priests and their deputies saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" For the first time I read this and I realized, man, all that is resistance. Jesus' step-by-step faithfulness creates a conundrum for the people around him. You couldn't ignore it. Either you acknowledged Jesus or you resisted it. For them, this was the path of most resistance. They didn't want Jesus to just go away. They wanted to make him look like a fool. And I know when I read this, I'm like, man, I would never do that. I would never resist Jesus like that. I'll bet you I do. And I'll bet you do too. Because here's where I'll leave it for you today. I believe wholeheartedly in this old doctrine. Remember I said you don't got to understand all the doctrines, called Prevenient Grace. If you never remember that word again, fine, remember this. It's the idea that God has been knocking on your door long before you were ever interested. God is at work in every human life right now. You can either respond or resist. Jesus is coming to the world is God's knocking loudly. You either respond or resist. Jesus' death on the cross and resurrection is Jesus like kicking down the door, saying nothing stands between us but love now. Will you respond or resist? And a lot of Christian behavior that's tagged as faith is actually resistance. All the certainty that we act like we have sometimes, that's not faith, it's resistance. I'll leave you with this. Remember that Jesus' invitation is, what does he say to the first disciples around that Sea of Galilee?
Go be fishers of men.
Follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. Follow me. Not, hey, we need to go into this room here because I need to teach you the blueprint. I need you to teach you the plan. I need you to teach you all the doctrines so you can pass the doctrines exam and then get in. Come follow me. Stop resisting. Let the wind blow in and through your life. Take the next step. So, will you respond or resist? I'll read this Hebrews passage one more time and pray, and we're done for today. We made it. So then let's also run the race that is laid out in front of us, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us. Let's throw off any extra baggage, get rid of the sin that trips us up, and fix our eyes on Jesus, faith's pioneer and perfecter. He endured the cross, ignoring the shame, for the sake of the joy that was laid out in front of him, and sat down at the right side of God's throne. So, may you go with Jesus. Receive this blessing as you go today. Go with Jesus. Respond to his grace that's already at work powerfully in your life. Go where the Spirit leads you with the next step. And even as you experience that, as resisting the world ways, celebrate that you're moving with God's way. Go in peace. Have a great week. Get more scones, coffee, hang out. Thanks for being here, folks. See you.